Hello everyone. I wanted to share with you something that is pretty helpful for the notion of the separate self, which is the cause of our suffering, our depression, our anxiety, worries, and so on. So we have to start with what the separate self is, and this is related to the association that we have with thoughts, perceptions, feelings, and so on. These are our processes of the mind in which we sort of latch on for identity. We believe that we are the things that we're told, or the things that we experience, or the things that seem to happen to us. And this is a wrong perception, because you can feel it in yourself when you suffer for something. It's because you have attached yourself to something that changes, that is impermanent. And as long as you are attached to an idea, a concept, label of yourself, that's going to change. And that change is going to make you feel frustrated, suffer, be stressed about, be worried that it's going to change. So the separate self is that process of the mind that identifies with its own process, with its own activity. So for us to take a step back from it, so to speak, because we really don't do this in consciousness, you simply are, but just for illustration purposes, for us to take a step back from it, we have to realize, why is it that we identify with something? That is because we have a natural view of ourselves as something that is, something that exists. And that beingness is what we try to color or label or try to put names on it. So we can even say that the origin of the separate self is our own nature, and that own nature is existence, is being, rather. And this beingness is. Now, when we see this as the origin, as the source of who we think we are, we can see why we suffer. Because we know we are something permanent. We can feel it. It's part of us. Yet, every time we create ideas of what we are, they seem to crumble. They seem to fall apart. And so, the idea of this practice is to center yourself, take that step back, and simply go with the feeling of being. And that's why I say, stop being yourself. Become, or be. Start being, as opposed to being yourself. And that yourself means, of course, the separate self. The one that is still feeling sort of invested in those identities, in those labels, in that division of the one self that exists, which is something that is quite opposite of our Western view of the world, that we are made of things and we don't see the universe as one organism, which is changing rapidly now, and we're seeing a lot more how everything is connected. In fact, if we follow quantum physics, then that would show us inevitably that we're all connected. So, do we need to find more clues as to our connectivity? Well, I would say that for the people who are very left-oriented, just do the one exercise, and this is just to center yourself into who you really are. And our connectivity is that you are conscious, and I am conscious, and your experience of consciousness is the same as mine. meaning that I am conscious of my reality and you are conscious of your reality. That is the same feeling. How we are conscious of it, how we color it, how we label it is different, of course. Our multiplicity, actually the infinity of thoughts that we can create, makes us individuals. And so that individuality is what we latch on as an identity. And that's fine for consensual society in which we have to have differences, ways to name yourself and myself and to say this is what you do and this is what I do. For communication purposes is really helpful, but for identifying yourself is not, because that is what causes the suffering. That's what causes the worrying, the stress, the anxiety, and so on, to latch on to those thoughts, perceptions, and feelings that are being part of your reality. So the exercise itself that I want you to do is that first realize that who you think you are comes from the past, always comes from the past. It never comes from the now, because you cannot identify the now. You always identify things in the now from the past. So you're always generating the past when you're creating a separate self. And so if you go back to your story and you say, well, first of all, everything that I have lived has been one experience. You can condense it into one experience that is your story. And that story has the most legendary narrative that you can imagine. If you were to have the best writer in the universe write your story with every detail and everything that happened, and people can feel everything that you have felt through your life, it would be an epic story. And that applies to each and one of us. I mean, you can do this yourself and sit down and say, wow, the things that I have survived, that I have seen, that I have learned, that I have received and lost. I mean, everything that makes your life and your experience. That's the most legendary story you can ever imagine. It's yours. And so go back to that and realize that you were always weaving, as it were, this story. Where? In the present. Always in the present. And so that leads you to now, where you are right now, that you are continue to weave this story. You still have the threads of your experience to create this fabric that you call your life. And you're doing it constantly, thanks to the external environment that is bringing you the so-called experience. And you are just creating it. So you are in charge of experiencing your reality from the individualized portion of consciousness that you are. The organism of the universe, being as it is one being, experiences itself through consciousness, because it's what it really is, through each and one of us. So if you can see your life right now, and it's fine, you can start from the point in which you feel that you're suffering for this, or you're worried about this, or you have a calamity of some sort, or you cannot stand this or that. Start from there and notice that all of those things are the threads that you're weaving in your reality to create this story. Why? For experience. Because nobody else can do it like you do it. So for the whole organism that we call the self, the one self in the universe, your experience is unique and special because nobody else will be able to do it but you. And if you can go through this and say, okay, this is my privilege, and you take a step back, like I said, from the separate self, and realize that you're not that attached self to the thoughts, perceptions, feelings, situations, and so on. And all you are is experience. You are the experiencing, actually, because there is no experience and experiencer. That is a concession for the mind, which always segments things. You are experiencing. You are the threads and the tapestry, the fabric that you're creating. All of that is you, and it's in constant flux with eternity, which is the present now. So when you stand here and you see life flowing as experience and you being that part that experience it, then you have no separate self. It dissolves. There is no me that exists out there somewhere, because it seems to be projected from the mind, but it's always here and it's always in flux. There is no calamity. There is no reward, you call it whatever. Anything that may excite you or depress you doesn't really exist as a thing. It is just the stimulus for this story that you are, and you are not that separate thing experiencing that. You can actually see it all the time because it crumbles. Every identity you've had in your past has crumbled to some point, and you can see it crumble when you simply contemplate or meditate. There is no self there. There is no separate self in between two thoughts. Think about that. Or rather, not think, but realize that. So practice this as just another way of being in the present, noting that this is your script for your story. You are executing the script of your story. And in that way, you can see how you don't have to do anything to stop being yourself as the separate self and to simply be, because that's what you are. Thank you so much for watching this video. I wanted to share also as a conclusion that I think this is a very helpful way to assist in the awakening of the planet. I'm not talking about people. People are the planets, and inevitably they will be elevated, so to speak, by the self-realization. Why? Because if we are one being, let's call the planet one being, and this one being has all these separate selves, all these individualized portions of consciousness thinking as a separate self, and all of a sudden a couple of people start going inwards and realize who they are or what they are, then this one consciousness, individualized portion of consciousness that also is the planet, will start realizing itself, and as a result will bring this catalyst to others to bring them inwardly too. So this is why to me, Ramana Maharshi used to say that the sage that stays in the woods silent is the one that helps the most people by not doing anything, because it is the inward journey that really counts for elevating everybody else in their consciousness and liberating them, which is really the word that we're looking for. Liberation from the illusion of the separate self. All right. I was saying goodbye and I extended myself again. Thank you so much just for doing this, just for being, and practice this. I'm sure you're going to like it. I'll see you in the next video.